What's up everybody and welcome back to another Lightroom tutorial. So with winter just around the corner, I thought today would be a good chance to go over a sort of a winter blue tone. Something that I tend to do quite a lot when it comes to like taking photos in sort of snowy landscapes or just out of the snow in general. When you're in those situations and you take the shot, usually there's not a lot of color going on, especially if there is thick snow lying around everywhere. And sometimes you might even get that warm tone come across in the camera settings as well. So what we really want to do when we have these shots is try and introduce a little bit more color, and that color is generally going to be blue to help give that cool feeling of the setting that we're in. But the method that I'm going to show you today doesn't actually use the color grading or color splitting lower down. Instead, we're going to try and get this blue tone from just using the HSL sliders, calibration, and the curves tool. Particularly with the calibration and the curves, these are two topics I've talked about recently on the channel, and we're going to look at combining those skills in together here and try and create this blue tone that we have. So I've got an image for us to work with today, and this is one from Signature Edits. I was going to use one of my landscape ones that I took from Iceland, but I actually really wanted to show you something that had a subject in, and I like wolves, so this is a great photo to work with. If we look at the final one that we've got here at the minute, there's no masking on this at the moment, but we will add a bit later on. The aim of this edit then is to try and get this nice kind of cool blue tone going on around the wolf here in the background, but also make the wolf stand out a bit more, so the subject stand out. So we'll go over a little bit of masking at the end and how we can do that. This blue tone can be entirely personalized, so the method we're going to go over today, it's very easy to tweak that blue tone towards more of an aqua or the purple side. If we line this up with the original, you can see that the original is very much just a lot of snow covering, and you can see these warmer tones coming in the shadows, but also in the trees. We're going to try and get rid of that and just have this kind of dark, sort of moody blue look over it. For my presets, this is one that I just call Arctic Blue. So we'll hit the reset and everything, and I'm just going to recrop in on this as well, and let's start again. Okay, so I've recropped in here, and the first thing I'm going to do is just sort out the exposure side and see what I'm dealing with in the photo and what I can really get from it. Everything's pushed over more towards the whites, the highlights region here, obviously because it's mostly snow that we've taken. But you can see there's not, at the minute, too much detail popping out on the wolf here itself, so let's see if we can fix some of that. First thing I'm going to do is just lower the exposure ever so slightly there, and I'm going to pull my highlights all the way down, and straight away that's just going to darken everything that's there. I might just leave a little bit left in them, and then I'm going to pull my shadows up just to help reveal a little bit more detail. And this is something I do quite a lot in my images. I like raised shadows just so I can see what's going on a lot more there. With my whites and my blacks for this, I'm probably just going to pull both of them down. And blacks as well. And there we go. So if I compare between the two, we've already darkened that image down ever so slightly, which is good. The background feels a bit darker. I feel like I can see a few more details on the wolf as well, and that's going to be easier to make it pop out later on. Keep moving down then. We're going to come down. I'm going to introduce a little bit more clarity into this. If I had in the background something like sticks that didn't have a lot of snow on, so it's quite busy, or if there were still leaves on the tree, that's where I'd probably go the other way with the clarity slider, and then I might bring in some clarity later on just on the subject itself. But for this one, because all the snow and the background is covering the leaves, it's not too busy. I'm just going to raise the clarity overall for that, and I'm going to do the same and just bring a little bit of dehaze in there too. I really like what this tool does, and that's probably a video I'm going to do fairly soon dealing with these three. For the vibrance and saturation, I'm going for a really sort of saturated look on all of this. Normally in my workflow I would come back and tweak this, but I know that with the tone curve I am going to be boosting a lot of colors, so I'm just going to bring this down now. I don't want my colors in this final image to be too bold with what's going on. And the saturation as well. So that's my basic edit sorting out the exposure. Let's keep going down now. We've got a few tools that we can work with: the tone curve, the calibration, and the HSL sliders. Now, we could take any one of these orders because all three of them are going to work together to give us that final like blue tone effect. But I'm going to start with the HSL sliders just to get all the colors where I want them to and remove anything that I'm not really going to be using. Then I'm going to go up to my tone curve and I'm going to bring in the sort of contrast, but I'm going to work across all the individual channels, and that's where I'm also going to do some color edits too. So let's just look at what we can remove, what we can bring down as well. Even though we're going to have blues presence, I am going to desaturate them too, and the luminance I'm going to bring down on a lot of this to help give that dark feeling that we're after. So even though we're taking a really bright day photo, we can get something that's a little more closer to dusk or nighttime. So I'm going to deal with the colours that I definitely don't want there first, and that's the warmer tones. So that's going to be my reds, oranges and yellows. Probably most of it's in the yellows, so I'm going to go with that first. And I'm just going to warm these up a bit more. And then I'm going to desaturate these down quite a lot. There we go. And probably for the luminance of this as well, I'm going to bring this down too. And that's going to help with where the yellows are actually sitting within the shadows there, just to darken those up even more. Keep going across, go for my oranges next. I think I might keep this as it is. And I'm just going to bring down the saturation again there. And also bring down the luminance of that as well. There's not too much going on in the red channel, but there may be still some things there. So I am not going to bother with the hue because there's not a great deal going on. But again, I don't want any of this coming back later on, especially when I start playing around with the different channels and the calibration and the tone curve. So I am going to pull this out as well. So I'm sort of keeping my warm colors all doing the same thing there. Okay, now it's going down into the cooler tones. So we've got greens, aquas and blues. Going to go for the blue first then, and this is where you could start to tweak what's going to happen with the overall color. Is it going to go more towards an aqua, or is it going to go more towards the purple? I think I might go for more of an aqua feeling, so I'm going to push this to the side. Maybe a bit more. That's great. Let's just try and go for a lot, see what comes out with that. And I'm going to desaturate these as well. The reason I'm desaturating the blues when you think this is the primary color going on is because I don't want them to be too vibrant. The tone curve is going to do a lot of that for us. Remember, when we're dealing with boosting contrast, you are also boosting saturation. So as I'm bringing in contrast on the blue channel and just the main tone curve itself, I'm going to be boosting the saturation of these colors there. So I don't want to overpower that. I'm just doing the work on that now. This is something you could leave for the moment, do the tone curve and actually come back and edit. But just because I've done this work for a few times, I'm going to do this now. So my blues, I'm going to bring down probably to about 50 for the moment. I may boost this and bring it up straight on, and then same with the aquas as well. Probably not down as far. I'm just going to push the aquas up towards the blue side a bit more. So if I'm pulling my blues down that way, I'm going to push my aquas so the two different tones match a bit more. I like to unify the colors when I'm going with my edits, and just pushing both the sliders to the opposite sides is going to bring them closer together. It's weird, you'd think it'd push them further away. Coming down, luminous again. So even though you can't really see much of the colors there, if I bring the sliders down, it will still darken the areas. I do want that dark feel for this, so I'm going to bring my blues down just like I did with my other colors there. Yeah, let's bring the aquas down as well. Actually no, let's leave the aquas in a minute. It's just maybe just a little bit. And greens, not a lot going on the actual green channel, so I'm just going to leave most of what's going on there alone for the moment. But similar to the reds, where not a lot was going on, I could still just follow the same thing as what I've done with the blues here. So I will just desaturate it a bit. I might just push that towards the green, so just away from the yellow side a bit more. And that's really going to be my starting point for a lot of this. Purples and magentas, I think as we introduce in the tone curve, like, we are going to dangerously go towards the purple channels quite a lot, and it's not really a color that I want in this edit. So I am going to pull that all the way down, so when we do drift towards those channels, we're not going to be overwhelmed with purple and magenta. So I'll do, with these channels, I will also bring down the luminance as well, just because I know the tone curve is going to go towards them. So these will also come down for me, probably sitting at quite a dark, what would seem like a very dark level, but you'll see how it all comes together. Although I will say that now we got the colours, there's one thing I'm going to go back and do before going into the tone curve here, and that is just change the temperature. So the temperature is already going to introduce some of these blues in. Might be crazy for leaving it this late, but I like to try and see what I can do with the colours first and saturate what I want out, and then I usually go back to the temperature slider. But you could do that at the start and go the other way around. Everybody's got their own slightly different workflow. So bring in some of that, and now it's time to come down to the tone curve. So the tone curve is going to have the biggest kind of impact on these blues, and then I'm going to finally tweak that with the calibration there. First thing I want to do on the point curve is try and bring in a bit of contrast. Then I'm going to go across every individual channel and just work with them a little bit more. It will look bad for the first time you do the red channel, the green channel. Once you get all three of them working together, that's where the power of this comes together. So don't be put off that it's going to look bad. Basically, try and do similar things across each of the channels, but the ability to just tweak each channel as we go is what's going to help with the color grading here. You'll see what I mean as we go through this. So let's first of all try and bring in a bit of contrast, and I'm going to go with just an S-curve to start with here, with my midtones, my sort of shadows and highlights there. And I don't want to be doing too much, but I'm going to raise the blacks up just for that matte finish, and just put a little control point in there as well to help with that. Those are more for my benefits, so when I'm raising that, I'm not really affecting anything that I end up doing over here. It's just a trick that I do on all of my photos. And I'm not going to go too drastic on this because I do quite like what's going on in the image. Just a little control point there. There we go. So that's just bringing in a little bit more contrast. Again, my aim is to try and make the subject stand out. Now I'm going to go through each individual channel here and do a similar thing. Start with an S curve. Try and find the right point for the mid tones there. And then I'm going to copy this pretty much across each channel, but there's going to be very slight changes, and that's where you're going to see the biggest difference in the tone. So already that's added, you know, this sort of pinkish purple element to it, not what we want, but we're not there yet. Over to the green channel, same again. Let's get that across there. And the further we do this, the more we're going to get that blue tone that we want out of it. And then finally, the blue channel. So you see already as I've just raised that, this is now bringing us in line with those blues that we wanted. And as I push down into the yellow channel here, you might think, why are we adding any yellows in? But as I do this and push down, remember we've saturated out a lot of the yellows and things already. So by doing that colors down here, first of all, is made this process a lot easier for us to actually get the color of blue, the tone that we want in the background here, just a bit more correct for us. And let's bring that up. So as I bring this right the way up, you can see the more that is actually adding on. And as I bring it down here, it goes towards what we don't want. So I try and find the balance that I'm after there. Just put a little bit more of a control point in. And if I push, you know, the shadows up, that would do the same thing. But you can see as I pull the shadows down, especially looking at the logs down there, you get those full blue tones come in. I pull down here more towards the yellows, you get that desaturated feeling, almost towards the greens, which is quite nice. And there we go. I can go back and forth between each of these channels now and sort of see what the effect overall has, and finding the right balance with it. So if I go on my blue slider now and I pull up, you can see we're controlling the entire image of the blues there. And as I've resetted that back, you can see actually how overpowering that is, which is why I like to saturate these colors beforehand, do the tone curve. There's nothing stopping you coming back and editing this. I just don't like to touch the tone curve once I've got what I want in there, right? Same up here. Now I can choose to pull that away if I want from the aqua a little bit more to find what I want on it, and I can also darken the entire thing down as well. So that's looking quite nice. The last thing I'm going to do is just tweak the calibration ever so slightly. Please do watch my video on calibration if you've not to fully understand what's happening. But as a quick rundown, all I'm doing here is globally editing the different channels. So for me, this is again unifying colors together. If I go onto my blue channel here, and I pull the right way across, it's going to go more towards the aqua, more towards the purple. I don't really want purples in this. I'm just going to pull this way slightly, get a bit more of an aqua feeling in there. And I'm going to boost the saturation of this channel. Now as I come up here, if I pull the greens all the way down, I get a bit more into that deeper blue territory. If I went all the way up, it's going to lighten the image there. It's kind of personal taste, what you like with this. But I'm going to come right the way down to that, and I'm going to actually desaturate this channel slightly. Again, saturation, completely personal choice. If I bring the reds all the way up, I'm pushing it again more towards that deeper blue than if I went to the other side. I get a very cool sort of blue. And this is a great way where if you save it as a preset, you could reload this onto different photos. Actually, instead of tweaking any of the colors down below, you could tweak the calibration, save it as a new preset. That way, every time you come on to editing a new photo, you've actually got a load of different presets there, each with a slightly different calibration, which is going to produce a slightly different blue in the background. So for this, I could go more towards that cool or more towards that sort of deep blue. I like this side personally, so I'm going to leave this over here, probably about 40, 50. And I'm going to leave the saturation on that. Might just introduce a little bit in the shadows there. So the three of them combined has had a massive difference at producing, this color grade, but also at controlling the contrast as well across the channels. You can go down, you can use the sort of the split toning, the color grading tools a bit further down here. I just really like this method because you get a lot of control over all the different channels. It's very easy to create a pack of presets off of something like this as well. And it's completely up to you how you like this blue. So now I can sort of come back down into my sliders here. I can darken what's going on. I can brighten it up. I can go into my blues. I can saturate this out a bit more, or I can add more blue in. Controlling these three sliders is really nice. That I quite like. That's got a really nice feel. So now if I compare across the other side, I've taken a really bright photo with the day and I've made it, look something like that's closer to night or dusk. The final thing that I'm going to do going over all of this then, or close to the final thing, is I'm just going to come up to the contrast. This is the last thing I do on any of my edits, and that's just a push to one side or the other, depending on whether I've gone a little bit too far with the tone curve or not. Like I said, once I've got the colors right with the tone curve, I don't like to touch it too much. So for this, I'm just going to raise contrast globally a little bit more there. And then finish it off, a nice little bit of masking. I want this subject to stand out even more, so I'll put a sort of custom vignette around it. Sort of radial filter, invert that. And I'm going to use one of my own brushes, but I'll just take you through what I do with that, which is basically bring down the exposure, bring down the blacks, and also bring down the clarity. Reason for bring down the clarity, it just introduces a little bit of blur to the sides. Again, gets your eyes to focus in on the thing that's sharp. And then the last mask, just very quickly, we'll do is select the subject. And we'll kind of do the opposite thing with the subject there. Now, you can see actually that's Lightroom's not done a great job than this one of selecting the subject. So you could either paint over this manually, or if you wanted to, let's quick run down on the brushes. You can click into the brush there, click the minus button, brush, and then you can actually just come over anything that you didn't want selected by Lightroom there. I'm going to be really rough for this because I know this video has gone on, and thank you for sticking this far with me. But I'm just going to brush out those areas. Again, very, very rough. Don't do what I'm doing, take your time on it. And then once I've got that sort of happy in place, I'm going to boost the exposure slightly. And I'm going to boost the clarity slightly as well. Not too much because I'm watching for the fur. And then anything else that is kind of dealing with like highlights and whites, I may bring up just a little bit too. And I pull my blacks down. So I'm essentially adding more contrast onto the subject, bringing up the exposure, just helping it to stand out from the background. And there we go. We have a final image, drastically different to what we had on the other side. But I really like the style, and it's a style that I do a lot on my sort of snow edits, anything wintry. You can see you can apply it to just a standard photo taken any time during the day in the winter here. But very easy to save as a preset and manipulate through just using the calibration. That's going to give you full control over tweaking the different blues that are going on in there. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I know it's quite a long one, but I really enjoy doing these Lightroom edits as well. So I really hope you get something out of that and a nice sneak peek at my workflow of how I do things as well. I will be having a course coming out soon. I've started work on it. It's something that I have been after doing for a long time, and it's really going to take you into great detail on all the different tools in Lightroom here. Different ways of using them as well, so not just the ways that I've shown you today, but the power you can get out of combining things and creating different workflows depending on the situation that you're in. If that's something that interests you, please do subscribe, drop a like and a comment below so I know that there are people that are after this. Drop any more edits you would like to see in the future as well, and I'll get some more videos coming up on them. Thanks again, I'll see you in the next one.